What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday night. Doing a special edition of the Underdog Fantasy Occupy Fantasy Best Ball streams in light of the Damian Lillard trade. I'm here with Brian tonight, so I'm not going to be by myself. Brian, how we doing?
What's up, Chuck, man? I feel bad the last couple of days or last couple of streams you've been on there by yourself and just talking into the abyss. So I figured I'd join you here, even though it's trending towards bedtime on the East Coast. I know it's basically morning over there on the West Coast. So what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm ready to get into it. I did make a friend or two on the last stream, so hope you're in here joining. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the draft right now. Hopefully, it doesn't take forever to fill. All right, so we're waiting for 10 people, so that's it's pretty great. But I was kind of wondering if because of the big trade, people would be more excited to draft NBA. Maybe they did a little bit earlier in the day, but hopefully it just takes less than a few minutes for this to fill. But we have a few things we can talk about. Big thing, Damian Lillard got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. That was very unexpected. Vegas odds had that as a I can't remember the odds, but it was very long. It's not one of the favorites. People thought Miami Heat, maybe the Raptors were in there. And so I'm just kind of wondering what happened. Like Portland got Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, a first round pick, and then two pick swaps for Damian Lillard, who's one of the most valuable players in the NBA. I think it's a little bit light, but we'll have to see what ends up happening with Drew Holiday. So I have the Portland Trailblazers. It's effectively their depth chart up here. Drew Holiday at the top, Anthony Simon, Shaden Sharp, and Scoot Henderson isn't listed up here, but he's going to be in the mix. He was their top draft pick this season. He was in the G League Ignite last season, had pretty good stats for coming straight out of high school. And so I mentioned on the last stream too, and I think you noticed that too. Brian made a comment in the Discord about it. Pretty excited about Scoot Henderson. Now his ADP is going to go up a little bit. I got a little bit of value on that. Let me see here. So DeAndre Ayton, people really, I think this is one of the more interesting parts of the trade. DeAndre Ayton and Yusuf Nurkic. Nurkic going to start at center for the Phoenix Suns. DeAndre Ayton, I think Drew Holiday is not going to play for the Trailblazers, but I'm pretty sure DeAndre Ayton will. He kind of needs to renew his career. The Suns did not like him last season. He didn't like the Suns, just pissed off all the time. And so who knows how hard he tried, but gets another chance at his career here. So have you been reading up much on these guys?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that you need. And I will start by saying this: that I am not an NBA expert by any means. You could ask most random sports fans that will know more about the NBA than I do. I am here to ask you questions, and I am here to ask the intelligent questions. But I do know a little bit, right? And when it comes to disgruntled employees in the sports world, sometimes a change of scenery is just best for everyone involved, right? And I think that perfectly describes DeAndre Ayton here. What's interesting is the Drew Holiday landing spot when it seems like the consensus from what I've been reading is that, and what you just said is he won't even play a minute for these Trailblazers. He'll likely be traded again. Why do you think that's the case? And if so, where do you think he ends up?
So Drew Holiday, he's got to be on the other side of 30 by now. Yep, born
The good side of 30, many of us would say.
the good side of 30. Yeah, this guy was born same day that I was. Close enough. But 1990, he's 33 years old. Trailblazers are not competing for a championship. They're hardly competing for playoff berth, especially in this tough Western Conference. I can't see Drew Holiday wanting to suit up for them. And I think it makes sense that the organization wants to ship him out because they have three very talented guards on the roster: Anthony Simon, Shaden Sharp, and now Scoot Henderson, who they're incentivized to develop. I don't think that there's any chance Drew Holiday suits up, but we'll see. I saw some Twitter experts talking about the two most likely landing spots are the Miami Heat or the Philadelphia 76ers, as we have a Tom Boyle in the chat. So Sixers are still in contention, right? If Drew Holiday goes to the Sixers, I think that's awesome for the Sixers. They get a little bit of defensive help at point guard. I'm not sure what's going on with James Harden. I can't think of a reasonable trade that makes sense for the Sixers to make because they said they're not going to trade James Harden. He doesn't want to be there, so they're not going to trade James Harden for Drew Holiday because then Sixers are in an even worse spot than they were because he's going to take up more usage than Drew Holiday. And they don't want to trade Tyrese Maxey because he's a good young player who they finally reinserted into the starting lineup at the end of last season, and he looked awesome. So, and we have Occupy's own the douche here. Maxey has to be part of the package, yeah, and that's the thing. Like Are the Sixers ready to trade Maxey for Drew Holiday? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the douche who's a staple in our Discord. If you guys are watching this either live or on replay, and you're not in our Discord server, mostly for the NBA DFS talk once the season starts, but also for these pre-season trades and as well as Underdog and best ball talk, then the link is in the description below. You can join that there. And I know the douche is particularly invested in this trade because he is a Suns fan. And my question to you that I was going to say, Chuck, is how does this work in the NBA? Like Drew Holiday, veteran, contender, championship winner, and they just ship him out. Is he part of this conversation? Like, yo, we have a chance to get Dame. We're going to send you to Portland. How does, in your expert opinion, how does that go down? Is he even a part of this conversation?
I don't think so. Maybe it's different franchise by franchise, but maybe the Bucks got a phone call this morning. Hey, we'll give you Damian Lillard for this. I don't think that they're even considering Drew Holiday's feelings.
Sorry,
Just
Drew.
we have the opportunity to get a bona fide superstar, and I do want to say Drew Holiday remains the most underrated player in the NBA. He's not a slouch on offense, but he's probably, I should say, a lot of NBA players say that he's the toughest defensive guard anyway in the NBA. And so to me, that's huge because my first thought was who's going to guard Steph in the finals next year. But it looks like we're shaping up for Bucks Suns finals, which is awesome. I should have pulled it up here, but the Bucks are now the favorite to win the championship next season. I think it was Bucks, Nuggets, Suns. There's someone else in the top four that I'm leaving out, but those are the main contenders. And so Bucks Suns would be really fun to see in the finals, given what's went down between these teams.
Oh man, yeah. And to your point about Holiday, anytime TikTok clip comes up of these post-career NBA players hosting podcasts, whether it's Shump or Reddick or whoever it is, and they have current NBA players on, it seems like the consensus is, when they asked that, they throw out that question, who's the toughest guy to guard and who's the toughest guy that you've had to try to score against? And it seems like that latter question, Holiday, comes up a lot when you see those clips. And as the douche says in the chat, and I think a lot of people agree with this, Drew is a big reason why the Bucks won their championship. They took a big hit here. So I guess my initial question to you, Chuck, when I first heard this go down is, as an NBA fan, what is your reaction? Because this is a mega superstar blockbuster trade.
I think it's fun. We get Damian Lillard and Giannis. Giannis is still the man there. I'm pretty sure it's his franchise, but now you got a guy, Damian Lillard, who can drop 30 on any given night. We saw what he was kind of doing with Portland last season, where he had very little help. They gave Jeremy Grant this outrageous contract, and he was good, but he wasn't second fiddle on any kind of contending team. And just the highlights with Dame and Giannis. Imagine this pick and roll, ball in Dame's hands. Giannis sets a beautiful pick. Like, we're going to see some really fun basketball. I don't know. I think that losing Drew Holiday's defense, and to a lesser degree, losing Grayson Allen's defense also, because he was playing almost 30 minutes a night for them towards the end of the season, if not more, during the playoffs. And he's just a great defensive player, hits threes, which is kind of what Milwaukee needed. But I guess we'll see. If you're scoring 140 plus a night, it probably doesn't matter how well you play defense. If you're just you're gonna outscore everyone. And they do still have Brook Lopez, who's second in defensive player of the year last season. So it's not like they're completely lost on defense. But I think that losing Drew Holiday and losing Grayson Allen is still going to be a decent effect there.
Let me ask you this: the Suns, and as I said, I've been out of the loop and don't follow the NBA much, but I see Bradley Beal in Phoenix now. Obviously pairs up with KD and Devin Booker. And you always think of this question when Team USA gets together, when you have so many ball dominant players. I as a casual observer and as a former player would categorize Beal, Booker, KD as ball dominant players. How do they synchronize? How do you think it plays out in that offense with those three guys who generally, when they've been on teams by themselves, have needed the ball in their hands? Maybe not Booker as much as the other two.
Well, so they're projecting Bradley Beal to start at the point guard, then Devin Booker, and some combination. I mean, they have Josh Okogie and Kevin Durant starting at the 3 and 4 spots right now. And so Josh Okogie does not need the ball in his hands. If he hits a few threes in the corner, that's fine. And now with Nurkic, I mean, when we were considering Aiden is supposed to be a great defensive player, whether or not he just didn't care as much last year, so we didn't see it as much. But it's kind of like, I was thinking about this specifically if they have to go against the Nuggets in the conference finals. Ayton did nothing to slow down Jokic, and so it's kind of like it doesn't matter who we throw out there; just have any big man. And if Ayton is unhappy here, he's going to ruin the chemistry. And
True.
so Nurkic is going to fit in great. He's going to be a double double machine. He's going to get all the rebounds. I think his value goes way up in these best ball drafts. But with Bradley Beal, I think that he just has to buy into, like, he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's probably going to bring the ball up the court, but him and Devin Booker are both going to do that. And he just has to realize he's third fiddle here. I think Kevin Durant's going to miss enough games due to rest, which is fine. If he plays, 60, 65 games, he's going to miss about 20 games. Him and Devin Booker, they're still going to be the 1-2 when Kevin Durant's not on the court. So I think it could work, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Some of the early stats on a Underdog, they actually had some good ones here for the Suns. I think they had Bradley Beal higher or lower than 21 fantasy or 21 points, and I think that's a little bit high, but
It does seem a little high given the context. And it was actually, I don't know what this. I mean, have you seen these clips, Chuck, of this conversation? I don't know if it's a new podcast or what's been going on, but it's been JJ Redick, Andre Iguodala, and Evan Turner. Have you seen these clips?
I've seen a couple of them, but not too many. No.
Okay, well, I think it was Evan Turner was talking about. He's like, "Yo, it just gets frustrating. Like, dog, how many times can I show up to the arena and get 4 fucking shots on 38 minutes, right? Like, and you think about it, and I'm using this in regards to Bradley Beal, accepting a new situation, right? Every single player in the NBA for the most part was a stud in middle school, in high school, in AAU, in college, G League, whatever it is. They're used to being the man, and now you're on a team of 12 the mans, right? And some guys have to take a back seat and accept these roles. And I think Beal at this point in his career, most of his talent wasted in Washington, I would imagine. Maybe it's time for him to take a third fiddle role.
Well, on that point, it's even more extreme with Bradley Beal because he's been the man in the NBA since he got here. I mean, he had John Wall on his team for a while, but then John Wall left, right, and he's been the only player in Washington for 6-7 years.
Right.
I don't know. And so it might be a little bit more difficult for him to transition, but I feel like I haven't heard any comments about it. He seemed like he's excited to be in Phoenix, so I'm pretty sure he understands that. But this 21.8 points per game, I wish they had another Phoenix Sun up here that we could compare it to. But
Cowards.
It's like there are very few teams in NBA history that have had 3 players average 20 plus points, and maybe the Suns this year could be one of them. Their depth got much better today. They got Grayson Allen. I know that some Suns fans are excited about. Where is he here? Not Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon's going to come off the bench and do his thing. Yuta Watanabe is a guy who I've heard some Suns fans get excited about, and he's stand in the corner, hit some threes, but
summer league preseason extraordinaire, Watanabe, right?
Right, and I think he's already 28 or 29, and so he is what he is, which is fine for this team, especially. It just, if everyone buys into their roles, Nurkic can be fine just grabbing every rebound, getting some putbacks. He should average a double-double this season. This team could be okay, but yeah, the bulk, how are Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker all going to take 20 shots a game?
Exactly. By the way, I saw the draft was pretty close to filling, which I think was probably a little faster than expected, which leads me in a professional transition to the next question. This huge trade. Who are you moving up and down your board in best ball? Because I imagine it's only been 6 hours or so, or whatever it's been, even though from Portland side, as you were mentioning last stream, Scoot Henderson, you were preemptively looking at guys on Portland side, assuming Dame would be traded. But now, knowing where he's landed and all the pieces that have moved, your initial reaction on because there's going to be some value tonight and in the coming days before the industry comes together to a consensus on how these players should shake out. But just initially, who do you think you're moving up and who are you moving down?
So one thing with Damian Lillard, he was going at ADP 19, and I think part of this was there's a little bit of fear of him holding out if he wasn't traded or if he was traded to a team he didn't like. And so it's hard for me to imagine his value went down with this trade. By the way, we only need one more person if there's anyone that just joined the stream and wants to help us fill this draft room. Actually, only took 10 minutes. It's pretty good. But ADP 19 for Damian Lillard, just looking at the guards going ahead of him, I don't know, does he move ahead of D Book? Probably. Does he move ahead of LaMelo Ball? Maybe. And so it's probably not too far off. He's only going to move up in ADP a couple spots, I would imagine. Looking at the rest, Portland. So, and just if you guys are drafting right now, they haven't updated the teams for these guys, so they're still listed with their old teams. But Scoot Henderson at ADP 65, I'm wondering if part of that was what I was talking about in the previous stream is anticipation for Damian Lillard not being there, and
Right.
because to me, Scoot Henderson's value goes way up, but the person who I would expect. Anthony Simons and Shaden Sharp are going to move up in ADP. They should definitely move up at least a round, if not a little bit more. Shaden Sharp should probably be in the 80s. Anthony Simons, at least one round. I'm not sure if they can start all three of them. Shaden Sharp's the tallest one, 6'5". I don't know if he can guard other small forwards. Maybe they don't care. I think just throw all of them out there, let them develop. Either
True.
way, there's 96 minutes to go around at the point guard and shooting guard position. They're all going to average 30 minutes. I can't imagine they don't. Jeremy Grant, I mentioned.
Yeah. Shout out.
Hmm? Go ahead.
Sorry, shout out to Simon real quick. Sorry to interrupt. Shout out to Simon who was on
My
last stream
man.
asking questions. He's back. He joined the draft. Now we're full. But I gotta say, Rod Stone is in the chat. He joined the draft. So we got at least 2 viewers watching this. So we gotta be a little hush hush chuck with tipping your picks here.
Well, what's fun about this too, specifically with the regular season scoring format, is we still want to advance to the playoffs because the thing is there's no min cash for advancing past round one. There's the min cash has come from being in the top 11,000 of the 56K, which is I guess pretty typical for DFS. It's about what 20%.
Yeah, true.
But you're only getting paid for the playoff portion if you make the finals. 94-person final with 10K to first, 1,000 to 10th, and $100 if you make the finals. I mean, that's 10 entries worth, which is great. But we're not necessarily just competing with each other. Like all three of us in this draft right now, the two guys in our chat, we can all min cash, and just by getting that regular season score.
True.
Let me pull this up. But Jeremy Grant, I think he's a pretty good trade candidate. Maybe he stays there. You do need some kind of veteran presence in the locker room and on the court to help stabilize the young guys, kind of guide them while they're finding their footing in the league. But if I'm Jeremy Grant, yeah, I'm paid, but why do I want to play for this team? Not saying that he's necessarily going to go to a contender, but
right.
I don't know, maybe it's what he wants because he's going to get shots anyway. He gets to kind of do whatever he wants. No one's going to tell him not to. And then Nurkic, I think, gets a huge bump being on Phoenix. Like I said, he's going to average a double-double. He's the only guy there who's really going to rebound. If they end up starting Kevin Durant at power forward, yeah, Kevin Durant's going to average a bunch of rebounds, but Nurkic is going to be the man in the middle like they were expecting Aiden to. So I really hate this with this 9th pick. This is probably the worst draft position in NBA best ball, and Anthony Edwards should be a wing. It'd be a lot easier of a decision.
You said wings, it falls off a cliff later, right?
Yeah, we really want to target wings early. I'm actually considering taking Pascal Siakam right now. Just lock up the top wing. We'll take Anthony Edwards, see what happens. Yeah, Anthony Edwards should be a wing. So
can we get a Taysom Hill position change before the season starts?
Man, it would be great to see that. And even on the other side, it's kind of even more extreme with the wings and the bigs. But I just think that taking Pascal here, and I've done this a couple times at the end of the first round, I'm kind of indifferent between Trae Young, LaMelo, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, and I think De'Aaron Fox and Donovan Mitchell are a little undervalued. So I could have just taken Pascal there, and then whichever guard is at the top of the ADP, just grab him at pick 16. But
who'd you check in the last stream? You took
I took the Mantis. Right? Yeah, I've been targeting Sabonis pretty early, and it looks like it's catching on because he went number 6. And I went and looked back at one of my old teams, one of the first teams I drafted. I think I got Sabonis at 21, 22, 23 somewhere. So his value is definitely shooting up. It's just the difference. So I've tried to think about what positions we can equate these guys to, and I'm not really sure with the bigs. Guards are running backs and wings are wide receivers, but big, I'm not sure.
Nope. I don't know what to tell you. All I can say is, from what the looks of it, this draft in the first round is a little more typical than last draft. I know we even got a couple comments post stream that were saying how crazy that draft was, at least early on, because Zach LaVine went 9th overall or something, right? I mean, we see those a lot in best ball, just these random drafts that shit goes crazy. But it sounds like last draft you did on stream was pretty atypical.
Yeah, and the difference, I'm so happy to be able to get Pascal. Like, there's a consideration to take Steph Curry here, but I have my elite guard already. It's Anthony Edwards. We're going to take Pascal.
That worked out.
It's different in the NBA versus NFL. And I've talked about this on previous streams where every other fantasy sport, baseball, football, even UFC, and I'm not too sure about hockey, but I think it's kind of similar where there are huge scoring events. You know, in NFL, long touchdowns from the quarterback to the receiver, baseball, grand slam, MMA, first round knockout, whatever. Where in the NBA, the scoring is just so much more consistent. We really only care about guys that stay on the court. And while some guys are going to score more fantasy points per minute than others, it just, if you're only getting 20 minutes, your ceiling is so capped. Where in the NFL, you could play one snap and rip off an 80-yard touchdown. It's at least possible, right?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. No, that's so true. And that was going to be one of my questions as we get later in the show here is in NFL, at least, it's easy to target late round picks, right? Role players who are big play specialists. Obviously, guys who are talented, but behind a starter if there's an injury or role change or something. What guys are you targeting late in NBA drafts? Is it just guys who are talented that are role players behind a stud, or how else are you differentiating those guys in the double digit rounds?
So when we were only worried about the playoff prize pool, I really like targeting rookies last season and just some guys who were stepping into a new role. You know, guys who maybe someone left their team or they're just second to third year players who are expected to make that jump. And because so in the late rounds, I think we really just want to target ceilings because, like I said, in the NFL, your picks past round 10 definitely matter. I mean, those are probably the most important picks. Like anyone can get the first few rounds correct, but
Yeah.
if you can nail the later round picks, you're looking really good. And those spike weeks are really powerful in the NFL. Whereas in the NBA, these late round guys are really only contributing to your roster if these early guys can suffer an injury or, you know, and for these late round guys, maybe someone on their team suffers an injury and they're moving into a new role where they get 30 minutes. But even on that note, it's a little different than a running back just stepping into a starting role and getting 20
Right.
carries, you know, a guard. And I think Tyus Jones is the best example where he stepped into a starting role for the Grizzlies and his production was still less than Jaws, but it was so much more than most other backup guards are going to produce when given that opportunity. And so I think that it's just so important to build a balanced roster and really nail your first 8 or so picks and then just take shots on guys who possibly have high ceilings or guys who can fill in for those injury weeks when your guys miss games, because the scoring format's different too. In the NFL, it's one game a week. Here, some guys have 3 games a week, some guys have 5. And I know we had a comment about it on the previous video. If you're watching this, whoever commented that, sorry, I haven't really replied to it, but I think it was such an interesting thing you said that you can really plan around it. For example, I think you said Cleveland or Brooklyn only had one game in one of the weeks. Let's make this pick here.
I'll pull it up for you, Chuck, and I'll read exactly what it said after you make this pick.
So Zion. Okay, so I talk about lean into uncertainty. You know, if guys were injured last year and their ADPs are lower because of it, like take them if at value, because if they don't get hurt, they're going to be a great value. And Zion definitely fits that, but I'm just too nervous to take him, so I'm going to take Jamal Murray.
You should do this and do this and do this, but
yeah,
I'm not gonna do this.
Yeah, I think some other guys that do fit that mold for me, like Paul George, I'm willing to take at ADP. Brandon Ingram, like if these guys don't get hurt, they're gonna finish above where their ADP is. Like Kawhi Leonard, we know he's going to sit games. And I've talked about if a player misses 2 weeks in the season, it's not that big of a deal. But if they're consistently missing a game a week or a game every 2 weeks, that really hurts the ceiling, especially with the regular season cumulative scoring format.
For sure. Yeah, and I don't want to be a doctor or anything, right? And we talk about injury prone in all sports. And as outsiders, we don't know which players are injury prone and which players are just unlucky. 99% of cases, right? Is a guy who's gotten injured 5 years in a row just gotten really unlucky with injuries, or is his body prone to breaking down and having these injuries? We're not going to know that as outsiders. But I think when you have guys whose bodies are breaking molds, like Zion being that big and that explosive, we can probably lean a little more towards maybe he's the type of guy who is more injury prone because of his body type. So I think your trepidation is probably a little warranted there.
And a player who I'm thinking about is Saquon Barkley, just to compare him to the NFL a litlittle bit. Like, I'm pretty sure he's just been unlucky with injuries. I don't think he's necessarily injury prone. Like, we see guys falling on him. He's not suffering non-contact injuries all the time.
Right.
I was gonna take Jimmy Butler there, but it's Paul George or DeMar DeRozan here. Brian, you have a preference?
Oh yeah, I totally have a preference. Nah, man, I don't know what to tell you here.
So with the regular
I'm here for support.
season, yeah. So with the regular season scoring format, I do think DeMar has a safer floor, but Paul George has a higher ceiling, and so we're just shooting for the moon. I do think that it's very likely Jokic is in the regular season winning team, and so the 11 out of 12 times we don't have the number one pick, or maybe sometimes a two pick if Jokic falls to two. We just kind of have to shoot for the moon. And that's what I did here. You know, Anthony Edwards, Pascal, Jamal, Paul George. I think this is a pretty good start. And I think it's kind of curious that these wings are still available. I think Kyle Kuzma might be my cutoff for. I definitely want two wings, Kyle Kuzma and above.
Okay, good to know. And I do want to ask you about lineup construction and correlation in a second, but the note about the scheduling, it's from Mark Burns, one of our viewers and followers. So shout out to Mark. If you're watching this, let us know. But he was saying, just a note about the schedule, the week of January 8th, Brooklyn only plays one game. Then in the playoff period, January, February, yeah, March, Jesus Christ. March 4th, Brooklyn plays 5 games. That's the only full week scoring periods that have anomalies of 1 and 5. Everything else is 2, 3, 4. However, he did comment, say, sorry, Cleveland also the week of 1/8 only plays one game. So a little bit of an anomaly here when you are playing week long scoring periods.
So what that got me to think about was okay. So Brooklyn, you said Brooklyn is the team with one game in a week.
Yeah, Brooklyn plays one game the week of January 8th, but Cleveland also plays one game that week. I don't know what is going on the week of January 8th. Is it like post near? Well, I don't even know what could possibly be the case.
It's probably just random, but I do have the weekly schedule pulled up on my other screen. Sorry, I can't use. Oh, I could probably show it here actually.
There's nothing more dangerous than changing tabs in Windows while live streaming. I'll tell you that.
Yep. That's why I use Firefox for streaming and Chrome for regular stuff. But
don't even want to know what's in your Chrome tab. Stuck.
yeah, can't give away my secrets, you know.
Mark is in the chat, by the way. So shout out to you, Mark, for that comment.
Oh, nice, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, you really got the gears turning there because so we do see Brooklyn has one game on that March 8th or sorry, January 8th week. And so the only Brooklyn net really though that's going early enough where I think it matters is Mikal Bridges and possibly Claxton if you're counting on Claxton to be your big, but I think you should be having a big before Claxton anyway. And so let me make my next pick here before I get into it.
Okay, and I will say, so I mean, we had a lot of guys in here that either showed up and watched the stream live last time or commented after the fact. Rod, Simon, Mark, appreciate you guys, and not a lot of people are watching these live, which is fine, right? But we're getting a ton of engagement and people watching the replays. So if you are one of those people watching on replay, definitely let us know what you think. We can get real-time comments live on stream, but your comments after the fact are just as valuable. So you have comments about players, format, strategy. You have questions. Definitely comment on the video after if you're watching this not Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, I love seeing the engagement. So really appreciate you guys watching it live and watching it later. I mean, this is already more engagement than we got on most of the NFL streams. And I do think the NFL product is a little bit more interesting to talk about just because what I said about the picks past round 10 mattering much more.
Yeah.
But I'm an NBA guy. I played basketball my whole life. I played basketball at a high level. So I love this stuff. And I'm really disappointed Walter White took Nikola Vucevic there. I think he's a tremendous pick if we were able to get him here to be our elite big. So most of the time, I want to grab my elite big right now, but because the next bigs up are well, there's no elite bigs left, first of all, but because the next bigs up, I'm not touching Kristaps Porzingis. I just don't see a ceiling in Boston. There's a couple guys down here that I'm going to be comfortable with as my starting big, or maybe grab two of them. They can rotate. We are going to take Ja Morant. I think that I'm strong enough at the guard position that losing Ja for the first quarter of the season isn't a big deal. And if he comes back and he can fill that flex spot, then we're going to be feeling pretty good about it. Yep. But what I was going to talk about with the schedule, so we see the Cavaliers have one game and the Brooklyn Nets have one game. So the only early net we're really drafting is Mikal Bridges, where the Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell is going late second round, maybe Darius Garland, maybe Evan Mobley. I think it's something, especially with the regular season scoring format, to target another player on a team that definitely has 4 games that's going to fill in for that week. So I don't think that only having one game here hurts as much as because so they only have one game this week. I think they're likely to have more 4-game weeks and maybe a 5-game week or two. I think those are so much more powerful than having the 1-game week hurts, if that made sense.
Yep, totally. And like Mark says, maybe the strategy is just as simple as don't pair your bigs from both Cleveland and Brooklyn, because then your third big is likely contributing the most during that week.
Oh, I like that a lot. Especially, that's a pretty reasonable pairing to Evan Mobley or Jared Allen with Nicholas Claxton. And so that's definitely something to consider. And I meant to turn this off. Don't pay attention to this. This is incorrect. This would normally be how many games they have in the playoff weeks, but it's not displaying the way that I wanted to.
Okay. Wait, we'll make this pick, and then I'll ask you another question.
So I'm between Walker Kessler and Chris Middleton. I've thought Chris Middleton was a pretty good value, but that was when he was the second scoring option on the Bucks. Now he's the third, and he still fills up the stat sheet. He gets rebounds, assists, but
Didn't you mention last stream that you like Kessler a lot? I don't know if you drafted him.
yeah, I like Walker Kessler a lot. He was one of my favorite like value picks past round 10 last year that ended up working out. And so if you can find players in the mold of Walker Kessler, there's another one I'm going to be targeting. I can't say it yet because there's too many people in the chat room in the same draft room. But if you miss out on elite big, I think you got to shoot for the moon. And Kessler is a good pick. And I'll just mention like Pirtle, I think has a pretty safe floor. I'm not sure about his ceiling with Nick Nurse not in Toronto anymore. I mean, he wasn't really playing over 30 minutes a game very much anyway, so it might not be as big of a deal for him. But yeah,
so are bigs just like tight ends in NFL then, right? Where you try to get one of the elite ones, and if you can't, you just cobble together a couple late round guys.
Kind of, but it works differently because in the NFL, if you draft like 3 late tight ends and one of them scores a touchdown that week, I mean that's a fine result, right? Where
True.
if you wait too long on bigs, there's not enough meat on the bone, if that makes sense. They're just not going to rotate. They're not going to rotate averaging 40 plus fantasy point weeks.
Okay, now the more important question I have for you. Mm-hmm. You're a high level hooper. You've said played all your life. What's your hooping schedule like these days? When's the last time you played competitively? When's the last time you played pickup? Last time you shot around? I'm asking this because I shot around today for the first time in a couple of weeks, and it always feels good to get out there and clear your head, even if there's nobody out there.
Yeah, I shoot around a few times a week. I haven't played like high level pickup in a bit, which is really disappointing, but I've moved to a new area not too long ago, and there's just not high level pickup around here. And with my schedule right now, I just haven't made the time to go to where I used to go play at. It's like an hour away from here. And I've playing pickup at the park here. It's just a little different. I'm more worried about getting hurt than I am like having fun and wanting to win. But I am a very competitive player when I play pickup. Like I'm the type of guy, like give me the basketball, and I'm not necessarily going to shoot it every time, but like give me the ball, and I'm going to. But I'll fill in whatever the team needs. If we need defense, I'll go guard their best player. We need rebounding, I'll help out more on the rebounding. Like if there's another really good shooter on the team, like I'm willing to take a back seat. Like I'll get him open every time. He's not going to get me open. So if I can get him good shots, then we're gonna win, and that's what I want.
We're gonna listen, man. We're gonna. I told you when we interviewed you, one of the reasons we hired you was for this hypothetical fan fiction that we've written that one day there will be a tournament where all DFS sites compete in a 5-on-5 basketball tournament, and we're gonna need guys who contribute to the team in different ways. I fancy myself as one of those players as well. And when you said that you played and that you're willing to do that, Chuck's hired regardless of his DFS acumen. Turns out you're a great DFS and best ball player as well. So just keeping that in mind whenever the day arises when everything is on the line and we're competing against Roto Grinders and RPS and Ship It and Stochastic in this 5-on-5 basketball tournament that I've made up in my head.
Oh, we would win for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that actually from the interview, just imagining who specifically from the other companies that I want to guard and like embarrass. And I'm not going to name them here, but there's definitely a few guys that I specifically want to
dude. Yeah, of course.
Do that too. And so here, I only have 2 wings, and typically I'd prefer to have 3 wings by now. But we went with John Morant. We went with our big Walker Kessler. And so I took Michael Porter Jr. And you mentioned something about correlation. And there's a little correlation here, but this... like guys from the same team is fine, but Denver, I'm not as sure about. I've taken Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon on the same team before, but Denver is probably going to not be in as many close games as other teams, if that makes sense. So their starters are going to miss out on fourth quarter minutes, which is huge. But I thought that Michael Porter Jr. has the highest ceiling of the guys available here, so I went for it.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, NFL, right? We're looking at playoff week stacking. We're looking at teammate correlation. Like none of that shit happens here, right? Like you're just you're trying to get the best players, period, that are going to play.
Yeah, and like Yeah, so the correlation is there a little bit, but it's just not quite like it was. And if I would cared about the playoff format, I don't care about the playoffs. If I end up getting to the finals and doing well, that's great. That's just kind of like a bonus for me. I would care about getting players who have more games in the playoff weeks and specifically the finals week than other teams. But
Okay.
here, it's not something I'm super concerned about.
Because just to clarify, this specific contest is more regular season heavy than
Yeah,
Best Ball Mania in football or something. Okay.
Yeah. And here I'm between Jonas. Like I just mentioned taking Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter, but since I already have two Nuggets, we're going to go with Valanciunas. I think his ceiling is pretty up there. His floor is not very high. We saw that the coach didn't love letting him run out a lot of minutes last year, but he was a player, if you played DFS, who could put up 50 points on any given night. So we'll go with the ceiling play there. And then I'm probably going to add a third big with my next pick, which is not a typical build for me, but I typically also usually have someone before Carl Anthony Towns as one of my big men. Been pretty condensed on my big exposure so far.
So normally taking two per roster, you're saying?
Well, the thing with the bigs is it's just like, for example, I've only managed to get one Jokic team in like 20 drafts, which is kind of frustrating because, like I said, I think Jokic is on the final team. Like taking another big on, even when you have like Joel Embiid, Demantis, we're expecting these guys to fill in the big spot every single week, and because there's only one flex spot, I think that drafting a second good big just takes away from a lot of the flexibility of having, three wings who can fill into two spots, having three guards who can fill into two spots. And those guys are really, the bigs are really only going to fill in that big spot on weeks when Jokic is injured or maybe only plays one or two games or something like that. And so,
Gotcha. Yeah, and if they're out for an extended period, your team's screwed anyways. So
yeah. Yeah, you're not going to make up the points of Jokic, where in the NFL, you lose Jamar Chase for a week. Like, I don't know, Josh Reynolds caught 2 touchdowns in week one, and, that made up for the Jamar Chase production that week.
wait, can you scroll down to the most recent round? Who's this Thompson guy that just got drafted? The Pistons guy.
Asar Thompson. So this is a rookie. Let's see. The rookies are Wembenyama, who I'm full fading. Chet Holmgren, I'm probably full fading. I love Scoot Henderson, and then I think the next, maybe I'm missing someone in here, but the next rookie is Asar Thompson. He's a twin. His other twin is Amen Thompson. I believe he plays for the Houston Rockets. But Asar Thompson has an opportunity to start for the Detroit Pistons, and so filling up the stat sheet is something that we're very interested in. And he is a rookie that I'd be willing to take a shot on. I don't know that I've drafted him much yet, but he's a pick that I do like at this time. And Ben Simmons at 93, I think this is a pretty sharp pick too. It's a little earlier than ADP, but if Ben Simmons is good to go, then you're just getting tremendous value here.
What's the consensus? I wouldn't say the consensus on Simmons because I think I know what the consensus public opinion is on Simmons. But he obviously came back recently and was putting up some numbers, and at least in DFS when I saw was a value play for a while there. What's his role in this team now? Where's his stability? Obviously, with all the issues, well, where like as a player, where is he now?
So I can't remember how many games he played after Kevin Durant was not on the Nets anymore. And so he's not there. Kevin Durant's not on the Nets anymore. So their main players, Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie, I guess Nicholas Claxton, Cam Johnson, and Ben Simmons. I think that's their starting five. So Ben Simmons might average less than 10 points a game, but he fills up the stat sheet. And he's just kind of going to do everything. I think if he's on the court, he's a great defensive presence, or he used to be anyway. I think he can get back to it. And I think he's kind of like a glue guy who, I don't want to say a role player because he's a little bit better than a role player, but not that much better than a role player. So
you need those guys on your team, though.
The guy that I wanted to take that I was going to talk about shooting for the moon, Jalen Duren, Blankenship, very sharp pick here. I was kind of hoping he would make it back to here, but that's probably wishful thinking. But if Jalen Duren has opportunity to start for the Detroit Pistons, we saw him be a pretty good DFS player last year. Sometimes he was splitting time with James Wiseman. Sometimes Marvin Bagley was on the court. So he didn't always have the opportunity to reach his ceiling. And I did take a Valanciunas over him. He's a little bit more proven player, but Jalen Duren is a young player that I think we should definitely be targeting. He kind of fits that Walker Kessler mold that I was talking about earlier, where last year Walker Kessler was kind of unknown, but just had a chance to do great, and he did. So I got Nurkic here. I have my three bigs. Hopefully I'm done at big. We're not going to draft another one. If all three are hurt in the same week, this team's toast, but it's what we're doing.
Right. I mean, speaking of Scoot, where did he go in this draft? Because I know
He,
you took him what fifth, sixth round last time on stream.
yeah, I think I took a mid 60s. He went 54, which is probably more appropriate. I could even see him going a little bit earlier, but like looking at the players next to him, Scoot Henderson over Bradley Beal, just it seems kind of insane. And I know Scoot's going to have probably more opportunity, but Bradley Beal's on a much better team and much more proven player. So Brad, excuse me, Bradley Beal's probably still going to be a value.
Okay. Uh, who would you say last year? You mentioned Kessler. We'll make this pick, and then I feel like this always happens. Make the pick, and then, then I'll ask the question.
I was going to target Shaden Sharp, but he already came off the board. So the problem is, yeah, like wings, Josh Hart, even if he starts and plays 30 minutes, he just doesn't have that ceiling. Jeremy Sochan flashed a little bit, but we're going to go with Denny Avdia, player that I really like taking if we need another wing in this range. Mark Williams is also another big in that Jalen Duren, Walker Kessler mold, who, if he starts and gets those 25, even just 25 plus minutes, he's going to be a pretty good value pick down here.
Am I making this up? Was Mark Williams a point per minute specialist in DFS?
I'd be surprised if he was less. Yeah, he was definitely more than a point per minute. He came in and did very there. I want to say one night he was like 1% owned in one of these DFS tournaments and went off for like 50 plus, and it was just the dumbest thing ever because everyone played whoever the other center was that night.
Yes, I think I was just talking to you around that time. I do remember that. So, who last year? So you mentioned Kessler. Was he, or was there someone else who was the best value in the later rounds for NBA best ball?
Yeah, Jalen Williams ended up being that guy, the small forward on the Oklahoma City Thunder rookie, and it just turned out that towards the end of the season, we knew that the Thunder typically sat their best guys because they weren't competing, and he was a player that I targeted very heavily. Of course, my team that got to the finals didn't have him; all my other playoff teams did.
Naturally.
But with the playoff format, he's a guy who is very, very strong. And if you can find that rookie who ends up playing 35 plus minutes, Shaden Sharp kind of did that too, unexpectedly. But if you can find that guy, I mean, it's very strong in a playoff format. And I just want to note, Mark Burns did say careful with Morant. He misses 25 games, which is a lot, 47% of the regular season, and that is. But I already have my two elite guards, and let me just see who I took John Morant over. Like some other guys I could have taken. I could have taken Tyrese Maxey. I could have taken Jalen Green, Jabari Smith. But at 57, I'm willing to take the shot on Ja. And if he can fill in my flex spot for those last 8 weeks, then I think that's pretty strong.
Yeah, that is yeah, it's fair. I mean, much easier to take him as your 3 than if you waited and you took him as your first or second. So, is there merit to just taking rookies later in drafts on teams we expect to be really bad?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, looking at this, like let's say round 12 through 16, if you hit on one of those guys and they contribute decently to your roster, I think that's a win.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
If you brick on 4 of them, like it's not a big deal. Whereas in the NFL, you probably don't want to brick on 4 total rounds. But again, you really only have to hit on one of these late round guys, and it makes it worth it.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Any other names? Well, I guess I don't know if you want to give it away yet, but yes or no question. Do you have names in mind that you're targeting?
There's one right now. I'm really hoping Walter White isn't sharp enough to go there, but he already had 7 guards. So Emmanuel Quickly, he showed. I think he was one of the only players. There's probably a handful of players that scored 70 DFS points in a single game last season, and Emmanuel Quickly was one of them. Granted, he is still behind Jalen Brunson, but maybe he gets moved to a bad team. Maybe something happens to Jalen Brunson. It's just if in the event Emmanuel Quickly steps into a starting role where he gets those 40 minutes that Tom Thibodeau is rolling him out there for, this is also a really good value pick at this point.
You could have given me 500 guesses, and I would not have guessed Emmanuel Quickly as a 70-point DFS score.
Yeah, I want to say he put up it was at least 40 plus for 2 weeks straight. One of them was a 70-point performance. One of them was a 50-point performance. He just went ballistic when Jalen Brunson was out. And I want to say he played 48 minutes in a game too. I know if you're still in here, I know that you probably remember those nights because they were fun. Yeah. Oh, Smitty's in here. Hey, Smitty. Yeah, he never left the court.
Smitty?
We know Tom Thibodeau likes to run players into the ground, and
glad to see things haven't changed with Thibodeau there.
Yeah, so let's just ride that. So
how you feeling about the squad so far?
I'm a little nervous about my wings. If Paul George misses any time, then we were really counting on Michael Porter and Denny Avdia to fill in for them. But like we really need one of them to average 40 fantasy points over weeks to make it worth it. So I'm not feeling too great. I'm not feeling bad about it, but thinking about what my next wing pick is going to be, and it's not looking great. Gary Trent's another player I've been targeting. Nick Nurse is not in Toronto anymore, so the minutes thing is going to be a little bit different there. But Fred VanVleet's also not in Toronto anymore, and so Gary Trent, he's going to be the sixth man in the event someone in the starting lineup gets hurt. He's going to start. I think he's a fine fill-in for a couple of weeks, especially we're going to be missing Jaw for half the season.
Where's Van Vliet now?
In Houston.
Oh, right. Okay.
In Houston, which is at first I wasn't sure about that, but because Kevin Porter Jr. got in some trouble off the court, I'm not sure that he's going to play basketball in the NBA again. Knowing these guys, though, in a year he probably will be. I mean, Miles Bridges is back, and he did allegedly did bad stuff too. But it's definitely good for Fred VanVleet, and I was kind of surprised his ADP didn't creep up a little bit. It's still stayed around where it was to begin with. And Jalen Green's ADP should probably be a little bit higher too. I mean, this guy's usage was insane. Showed potential to average 40 points over a scoring week. So,
yeah, that's crazy. What next question for you? What are you thinking for allocation for these contests? Not necessarily dollar amounts, but just how many entries are you looking to do? How much are you looking to go in on NBA preseason best ball versus? I know you thought you had a big edge in the postseason NBA contest last year. So just what are your thoughts on as a full season, how you're going to allocate your bankroll here?
Well, I think I messed up by not jamming in as many entries as possible before the early ADPs really updated in this contest. I mentioned before, I'd be kind of surprised if the winner wasn't drafted already. If the winner wasn't drafted in like that first week, because ADPs were crazy, and I got a few like stacked teams, but I'm sure someone out there has some crazy teams that are just completely impossible today, even if you're drafting with some less experienced drafters who let certain players slide. It's hard for me to think that the winner's not already out there, but we're in here, we're competing, and so I'm probably not going to max this tournament out, but hopefully they release some smaller tournaments where everyone's working with the same ADP again, and I'll probably enter those a little bit harder.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you and I were talking pre-stream, but just a quick transition to NFL here, a quick pivot. The mid-season contests are going to be revealed, or they're already out, that start in week 6. So we have already 3 weeks of data plus these next couple of games just to really shake up ADP. Are you going hard at those, or are you treading a little lighter in those?
I think I did 8 drafts yesterday before the ADP updated, or maybe 7 yesterday, 1 this morning when the ADP updated. But we were talking about this where we have 2 more weeks of games before that tournament starts scoring. And people overreacted way too hard, I think, in the first round of drafts I did. And so I'm sure people are going to overreact to these next 2 weeks of games as well. So there's still going to be some value to be had there. The strategy there is so interesting to me. Like certain guys who were, getting drafted in every draft, like the 2 guys I'm thinking of around pick 100, AJ Dillon and Antonio Gibson, those guys almost went undrafted in a few of the drafts I did yesterday, which is like, yeah, they had bad games and low usage, but like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of edge to be had there if you're smart about not overreacting to things and things that we thought preseason. Like maybe they're different based on the usage we've seen, but
they're not that different.
It's not that different. No.
Yeah.
Seeing like the earliest I saw Pukanakwa go was pick 25, which is probably pretty early, especially considering we're expecting Cooper Kupp back for the start of this contest. And so little things like that.
Where would he have gone if he continued with another 10 catch, 100-yard game on Monday night?
He'd be a second rounder, right?
Probably, dude. I don't know. I would take him in the first round. he's going to score 20 points every game. Crazy.
If he's the greatest player of all time.
Yeah. Oh man.
I'm going to take Kelly Oubre here. Nick Nurse is coaching in Philadelphia, and Nick Nurse likes to run his players into the ground. In the event something happens to maybe Tobias Harris or James Harden's gone, Kelly Oubre is a player who can put up monster scores. And like I said, we're not really counting on him to contribute to this team, but if he does have a couple weeks of scoring, then we're pretty happy about that.
Totally. Am I making this up? Is Oubre a gunner? Like when he's in the game, he's shooting?
Oh yeah, you could. I saw jokes like Oubre's going to have Jokic guarding him on the perimeter, and Embiid's going to have Jamal Murray pinned in the post, and Oubre's still going to chuck up a step back three. It's not. It doesn't matter. So that's another thing. Like if he takes 20 shots when he has the opportunity, like these are the kind of players that we're going to be interested in. Because if he gets hot, he gets hot, and if he's cold, then he'll just get benched, and we don't really care.
Exactly. No, exactly.
And he did just sign for the minimum. He was not signed, so he was like a free agent for a lot of this draft. His ADP hasn't really moved that much.
Okay.
He's probably one of my higher exposed players at this point. So we got 3 more picks. There are a few guys late that I don't mind getting to, like Bogdan Bogdanovic. His ceiling, I'm not sure if it's there, but he could get the opportunity. Something happens to Trae Young or DeJounte Murray. Like Karis LeVert, we saw step into a pretty good role when maybe Donovan or Darius Garland was out. Cole Anthony's on the trade block. If he gets traded to a really good situation, his value could go up.
Yeah,
Quentin Grimes.
I'm just thinking of these guys. It's like as you're naming them, it's like, oh, these guys were all a part of if then sections of the past year or two in NBA DFS and in our plug when we had it 2 years ago or last year during the videos. Yeah, if starters out, these guys are going to want to play them their values, and I think it sounds like it's a similar strategy here. They're not going to be there all season long, but on the days and weeks when they are in the starting lineup, they're going to be values.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I'm considering taking a 4th big, but it's like I don't know if I want to use that roster spot, and it might not matter because these guys aren't really going to contribute anyway.
I vote no.
Yeah, on a 4th big.
I do.
Yeah, because it's like I don't want a 4th big. Like Zach Collins is projected to start next to Victor Wembanyama, but he's probably not going to outscore these guys for a scoring week. Like maybe one scoring week over the season, but it's not like he's going to add more than a few points, so it doesn't really matter. It just
not worth it.
Just an injury fill in.
Speaking of NBA DFS, what's your plan for the season? So, for those of you watching and listening, we have a lot of video content planned for you guys this year, similar to what you saw last year, just on an expanded level. But for your own personal play, how are you feeling about the upcoming season? Have you started planning out what types of contests and where you're going to be trying to aim for?
Yeah, so I typically just play in the lower stakes 20 maxes, and then sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling, if I'm on a hot streak, I'll play in the 100K to first contest. I took some shots last season, didn't really work out, but we'll see what happens this year.
Shots really do work out, but take those shots. You gotta take those shots. I was talking to someone. I can't remember who it was. Yeah, this morning, in fact, it's like if you think you have an edge and your bankroll's growing a little bit, it doesn't hurt to take a shot, right? As long as it's not your entire bankroll, like take a couple shots. Because God forbid the one time you run hot during a shot, I'll raise my hand. The $1 million payday in the Super Bowl GPP, that was a shot I took with my bankroll. Sometimes you get lucky with those shots, and you're never gonna see those big paydays if you don't take some shots sometimes.
Well, the thing that hurts too is if I took the shot a month earlier, I would have won the 100K 3 times. And so it's like, like you said, yeah, it's all about timing, right? So,
yeah. And you can't. I mean, you're not going to know when to time it, right? So just keep to everyone out there, grind your bankroll, and then take some shots every now and then.
And I do find my results to be better towards the beginning of the season. The last 2 seasons in a row, I did go on a little downswing from about probably like January to March, and it could just be variance. 2 seasons is too small of a sample size to really know. But one thing, maybe this is a discussion for another day, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on all the sim talk. And we've seen Petty Theft, the #1 NBA player, talk about brains over sims, and I feel that I'm a brain player because I kind of whatever projections I'm using, I adjust them to be my own custom projections anyway. But do you have any early thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I could do a 3-hour podcast on this subject, but part of the reason, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, I've been doing these where projections are wrong. I've seen, Chuck, you've liked them a couple of times, so clearly you've seen them. Yeah. But the reason for starting those is as simulations and advanced projections continue to flood the industry, then we're going to need to find spots where projections are wrong. And I think you do a great job of that in NBA DFS. Is why you are successful. And when I say everyone, but the field congregates on a handful of plays despite similar projections for guys that are lower owned, I think those spots that we have to take advantage of. And as a result, what I really think is if you're not a simulations-based player and you try to play quote unquote optimally and you try to get equal exposure to different guys, you're not going to beat sims in that manner, right? They're literally built to do that at a level that humans cannot do. But if us, we use our brains, we watch the games, we look at trends, we find there whatever subjective reasons we find, but then we go really heavy on those spots, right? And we play really big leverage on those spots. That's how you beat the Sims, and that's how you beat a lot of the guys who aren't thinking; they're just running the numbers. So that's my high level takeaway from it.
I like that. I like that. And like in terms of my personal play style, I do tend to go hard on if I think that the field is wrong about something, I'll full fade a guy, and maybe a 2% owned guy I think is really incorrect. I'll play that guy in half my lineups, and it's worked out more than it, like I should say, it helps me more than it hurts me when I'm right or wrong.
This it sounds dumb to say, but like we're gonna lose anyways, right? We're gonna lose
Yeah.
a lot anyways, right?
Hmm.
And I've always thought to myself, it's like, wow, and everyone's guilty of this. It's risky to do this fade. Like I could lose all my buy-ins, and then you don't do that, and the next morning you still lose 90% anyways. So like, if you're gonna lose anyways, why not get the major upside of being right when you are of getting the most out of it when you are right?
Yeah, and when I do win tournaments, I tend to have a lot of lineups near the top, and
Yeah.
so it just, yeah, when you're right, it's a lot more powerful than being wrong hurts you. Kind of same thing
And
here.
it's especially helpful when someone like you are playing 20 lineups in a 20 max GPP
Hmm.
because you still have to beat tens of thousands of people. Or for those of you watching who only play a handful of lineups, you want to take shots in the bigger GPPs, you have no choice but to have huge leverage because if you're just going to try to be balanced with only 6 lineups, all the other people with 150 or 20 or however many lineups are going to beat you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
And on that note, one of my problems that I know I'm gonna try to improve this year is if a guy's chalk, it's just for some reason they just go down in my mind. Even if I maybe thought they were a good play before I saw the projected ownership, I see they're projected for 40%. I'm like, oh, I'm not playing that guy. But the other side of that is just play him in 100% of your lineup, and you can get
that's still leverage.
you can get that leverage that way too. So
I mean, we see it all the time in NBA DFS, right? You see like Petty or some of these other type of guys. If a guy's a good play and their numbers agree with it, shit, they'll just play 90, 95, 100% and make the field show that they're wrong.
right, right. And I think I'm going to go with the seventh guard. I'm considering Cam Thomas because he's been known to have those spike weeks.
I was going to say, speaking of guys who come off the bench and are willing to fire,
All right, we're just going to take Cam Thomas. Nice. You talked me into that, so thank you.
my expert opinion over here. The only, you know what, this is going to be really funny and no one's going to take me seriously anymore after this. I saw a TikTok yesterday. It was top 10 guards off the bench who are willing to fire and can put up 40 at any time. And Cam Thomas was number one on that list. So that is my reason for pushing towards you, Cam Thomas, just now.
Yeah, I mean, he has the opportunity to do it in Brooklyn. If he gets traded, it's even better. And so I'm looking at my roster now, and I'm actually a little concerned about the wing spot. Paul George has been known to miss time. Michael Porter's been known to miss time. Denny Avdia is pretty healthy, but maybe Kelly Oubre doesn't get that playing time in Philadelphia. And I took the rookie Cam Whitmore in Houston. Maybe he doesn't get that much playing time. So I'm really counting on Pascal, Paul George, MPJ to just really anchor my wing spot. But there's really, I don't know what wing I could have taken here that could really help my team. Because if these guys are out and I'm depending on, for example, Santi Aldama or Malachi Branham to contribute to my team, I'm not really competing anyway. Like maybe they help me min cash, but I want to win first place. I'm not trying to min cash in this tournament.
Which I think everyone who's playing they should be shooting for anyway. So I'll defer to you on the quality of that argument there.
And where Simon asked me if I could go over that Gabe Vincent pick was a little bit of a panic pick. I think Gabe Vincent's fine. He's projected to start for the Lakers. I do think there's a good chance D'Angelo Russell overtakes him. But if Gabe Vincent's in the starting lineup, we saw him do very well in the finals. He's a good player. I mean, if he averages 30 over some scoring weeks and he ends up filling in for these guys, maybe they miss some time, then I think it's a fine pick. But Simon asked me to just take a look at the other teams. And so let's go ahead and take a look at Simon's team first. I'm assuming this is you, Simon. You did say mention something about Giannis in the chat, so went with the 7-5-4 build, which is great. Two elite bigs, it's beautiful. Miles Bridges is probably a good value. He's been out of basketball a year, but if he can return to close to his old form and his old role, then he's going to be looking pretty good. Obi Toppin is another player in a new role on a new team who we're not sure what he's going to do. He has displayed a ceiling when he got that opportunity on the Knicks, so maybe he can carve out a pretty good role there. And then Jalen Johnson, kind of the same thing. You know, he's a role player, but in the event he fills in for some injured guys, he looks good. Your bigs look good here. I'm not sure if I would have went with the fourth big, given that you already had Sengun and Turner, who are pretty good, and then Mark Williams, your kind of moonshot. But Paul Reed's fine in the weeks he fills in for Embiid. If he adds a few points to your team, that's great. And then, yeah, your guards look pretty great. I mean, Kyrie, Darius Garland. I'm not in on Vassell, and I'm not in on the Spurs this year just because Greg Popovich does not like to play these guys 30 minutes a game. And I've been talking about 30 minutes a game is kind of what I really want, but he is a starting guard for them. He's shown a little bit of a ceiling, but I love the Shaden Sharp pick. I love the Keontae George pick, a rookie who we've talked about can be that end of season high scorer, and then Suggs and Jalen Hardy. Kind of same thing. If they're filling in for injuries, it looks great. So this is a pretty good roster here. I like this a lot.
It's just really quickly. I know you have to go here, Chuck, but Suggs, what a fall from grace, right?
Yeah.
Early first round lottery pick, right? Like that's crazy.
And it's not like he did well when he played. It's just that they're kind of log jammed at guard. And I did mention Cole Anthony was on the trading block, but I didn't mention that that kind of increases Markelle Fultz's value in my mind. This is the first time he's ever been healthy in his career for a training camp. And if he gets like total reins of the point guard position in Orlando, he's a triple double guy. I mean, just it could be a tremendous value pick at 117.
I'll leave this stream with this final note. We talked about our fan fiction DFS basketball squad. Our other writer, Bismo, he does the showdown plugs with you, Chuck. He was tasked with guarding Jalen Suggs in high school. So we have a 3-and-D guy if called upon.
I love that. Just a note on that. We played against Paul George my freshman year in high school, and our coach was hyping him up, and then we were like, oh, he's not that good, and then turns out he's Paul George. So
I'll give you one more story. I was just telling my significant other story literally yesterday. Summer league. I was maybe a sophomore or junior, and summer league, right? Guys are on vacation, whatever. You can't get guys there all the time. One game we had 5 players. We were playing against Spalding. That was when Spalding had Will Bowers, 7'1" guy who went to Maryland, but they also had Rudy Gay at the time too. Oh. And I like to talk when I play, right? I score the first 4 points for our team. The game starts 4-4. I'm talking shit. Listen, you boys are in PG County now. This is in private school. We lost 72-12. 72-12 after starting 4-4. So I agree with you in saying that we can talk about these future pros all we want and how not good they are at the start of the game, but they very quickly humble you.
That's happened to us one time in our high school offseason travel ball. The team was called Watts Magicians, and I wish I knew if there was a future NBA player on the team. I have no idea, but that was the first time we were ever humbled that hard. We just got blown the F out, because we were pretty good in our division, but then we played in a higher division for one tournament, and it just okay.
There's levels, bro.
Yeah. So everyone in the chat, we really appreciate you being here. This is great, Brian. Thanks for joining me tonight. It's a lot easier to do the show having you here with me. So we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, for sure. Even if I can't provide any DFS value or fantasy value, you can do all that, and we can trade war stories in the meantime.
You're providing a ton of value for these guys, so appreciate everything you do. And if you're watching this on later, if you have any questions, throw it in the comments, join the Discord. Just in case it's your first time depositing on Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code Occupy2, the number 2, and they'll match your deposit. Do they still have that promo going?
Yeah, they still do. It's until October 4th or 5th. I'm looking at my calendar now. Yeah, I think October 4th. Normally it's the deposit match up to $100. Now it's up to $500 for new users. So free $500 if you're depositing.
Yeah. So just deposit $500, get the free site credit, and then, do what you will with it. Pretty much everything that you could want. They have hockey, basketball, football, baseball still. The baseball playoffs is actually starts in 1 week and it's 44% full. I understand that it probably will fill because people are going to wait and see what the specific seedings are. But there's some good information on Twitter. Just message me on Discord if you want, and I can link you to the information that will help you do well in this. So we'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.